The stars looked different from the bridge of the human battleship Sol Dawn as it drifted near the construction site of humanity's newest colony ship. Commander Lee Hanna stood at the observation deck watching the workers finish the outer hull, plating on what would become New Sol. The massive vessel stretched nearly 3 kilometers long and would carry 50,000 colonists to their new home in the Outer Rim territories. Captain Park Min-ho walked up beside her with a steaming cup of coffee in his hands. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, running system checks and monitoring communications from the construction teams. Everything seemed peaceful in the Kepler system until the proximity alarm started screaming. Contact bearing 270 Mark 15. Lieutenant Kim Ji-won called out from her position at the sensor station. Multiple contacts, sir. Massive energy signatures. Hana moved quickly to her command console while Captain Min-ho took his position in the captain's chair. The main screen showed what looked like stars at first, but then the computer enhanced the image. Ships began to appear one by one until the screen showed a fleet so large it blocked out the background stars. "How many?" Min-ho asked quietly. 500 ships, sir, maybe more," Ji-won replied with worry in her voice. "The biggest ones are 10 times. Our size." Hana felt her stomach drop as she looked at the tactical display. The human fleet consisted of only 50 fighter craft and 3 support vessels, including the Sol Dawn, and 2 construction ships. Against 500 alien warships, they stood no chance in a straight fight. The communications officer, Ensign Yoon Summon, turned toward the captain. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the alien fleet. They want to talk. Put it on screen." Min-ho ordered. The main display flickered and showed the bridge of an alien vessel. The creatures standing there looked like a cross between reptiles and insects, with hard shell-like skin and multiple arms. Their leader stood at the center wearing what appeared to be military decorations across his chest. His eyes were completely black, and when he spoke, his voice sounded like grinding metal. "I am War Admiral Krextar of the Vorthak Empire," the alien announced. "This system now belongs to us. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be relocated, Captain." Min-ho stepped forward. "I am Captain Park Min-ho of the United Earth Defense Force. This system was claimed by humanity under galactic law. We have colonists and workers here." The alien leader made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your laws mean nothing to the Vorthak. We take what we want when we want it. You have one choice: surrender or be destroyed." "We have families here," Min-ho said, trying to stay calm. "Innocent people who just want to build a new life." "Not our concern," Krexter replied. "You have 1 solar day to decide surrender or die." Hana stepped into view of the communication screen. "Sir, this is Commander Lee Hana. I command the fighter squadron here. Perhaps we can work out some kind of arrangement." The moment she spoke, the entire alien bridge erupted in that grinding metal sound. Krextar looked at her with what seemed like amusement in his black eyes. "A female warrior? How interesting. What do your people call you, little fighter?" "My call sign is Butterfly, sir." The laughter became even louder. Every alien on their bridge was making that terrible grinding sound, and some were pointing at the screen. Krextar held up one of his many hands for silence, but Hana could see he was still amused. "Butterfly," he repeated slowly. "A pretty little insect that flutters around flowers. How perfectly appropriate for your species. You play at war like children play with toys." "Sir, with respect, our fighters are quite capable," Hana said, keeping her voice steady. "I'm sure they are very pretty when they fly, little butterfly, but this is real war, not a garden party." Krextar made that grinding laugh again. "Perhaps when we are done here, we will keep some of you as pets. Your flying might amuse our younglings." The alien transmission continued broadcasting to all human vessels in the system. Word spread quickly among the construction crews and colonists. Within hours, everyone knew that the aliens were laughing at their protector. The fighter pilot they called Butterfly had become a joke across the entire enemy fleet. Lieutenant Ji-won found Hana in the fighter bay later that evening. The commander was checking the weapon systems on her fighter craft for the 3rd time. The small ship looked fragile next to the massive alien vessels visible through the bay windows. "The crew is worried," Ji-won said quietly. "Some of the construction workers are asking if we should just surrender." "What do you think?" Hana asked without looking up from her inspection. I think those aliens don't know what they're dealing with, Ji-won replied. I've flown with you for 3 years. I've seen what you can do in that cockpit. They have no idea. Hana finally looked at her wingman and oldest friend. They outnumber us 10-1, Ji-won. Maybe surrender is the smart choice. Since when do you care about smart choices? Ji-won said with a small smile. Besides, they called you a pet. Remember what happened to the last group that underestimated you? Hana remembered the pirate fleet that had attacked a merchant convoy 2 years ago. The pirates had 50 ships against her squadron of 12. When the battle was over, only 3 pirate vessels remained and they were begging for mercy. That victory had earned her the promotion to squadron commander. This is different, Hana said. Those were human pirates who thought like humans. These aliens are something else entirely. So what? Ji-won asked. A butterfly is still a butterfly. Whether it's flying through Earth gardens or alien space, engineer Choi Daiho approached them from across the bay. He was the chief engineer for the colony ship construction project and looked exhausted. His work clothes were covered in grease and metal shavings. Commander, I heard what happened on the bridge, he said. Is it true they gave us 1 day? That's correct, Hana replied. Tomorrow at this time we either surrender or they attack. Daiho nodded grimly. I've been working on the new Soul for 8 months. My wife and daughter are supposed to be on the first transport to the colony. What happens to them if we surrender? I don't know, Hana answered honestly. The Vorthok didn't give us many details. About their plans, then we fight, Daiho said simply. Even if we lose, at least we try. Pilot Yoon Somin joined their small group. She was the youngest member of the fighter squadron, but had proven herself in several skirmishes along the frontier. Commander, the other pilots are asking what the plan is. Do we have orders from Earth? Earth is 3 weeks away by faster communication. Relay, Hana explained. By the time they receive our message and send orders, this will all be over. So what do we do? Somin asked. Hana looked out at the alien fleet hanging in space like a cloud of death. Their ships were arranged in perfect geometric formations that spoke of military discipline and overwhelming firepower. Every logical tactical analysis said the humans should surrender immediately. But logic had never been Hana's strongest trait. She was called Butterfly, not just because of her graceful flying style, but because of something else entirely. Butterflies were survivors. They migrated thousands of kilometers across impossible distances. They adapted to any environment, and when necessary, they could disappear and reappear as something completely different. We're going to request more time, she said. Finally, I need to study their fleet formation and ship capabilities. How much more time? Ji-won asked. 18 hours should be enough. For what? Hana smiled for the first time since the aliens arrived. To show them what butterflies really do when someone threatens their garden. The next morning, Hana stood before the main communication screen facing War Admiral Krekstar once again. The alien leader looked even more amused than before, as if he had been enjoying the fear his fleet caused among the humans during the night. Well, little butterfly, have you decided to surrender like sensible insects? Krekstar asked with that grinding laugh in his voice. We request additional time to prepare our people for surrender, Hana said, keeping her voice humble and defeated. 18 hours to organize the civilian evacuation and prepare our ships for your inspection. The alien bridge erupted in more laughter. Several of the Vorthak officers were making gestures that clearly meant they found human cowardice entertaining. Krekstar raised one of his many hands for silence. How generous of you to make this easy for us, he said. Very well, little butterfly. You have 18 of your hours to prepare your surrender. We will monitor your communications to ensure you do not call for reinforcements. Of course, sir, we understand, Hana replied. We just want this to go smoothly for everyone involved. Wise little insect, Krekstar said. Perhaps we will find a nice garden planet for your people after all. The transmission ended, and Captain Minho turned to stare at Hana with confusion written across his face. Lieutenant Ji-won and the other bridge crew looked equally puzzled. They had expected their commander to go down fighting, not beg for more time to surrender. Commander, what are you doing? Minho asked quietly. Buying time, Hana replied. Soman patch me through to all human vessels in the system but use encryption protocol 7. Sir, that's just our basic training code, Soman said. Any first-year academy student could break it. Exactly, Hana said. I want them to think we're trying to hide something simple. All ships, this is Butterfly Actual. I need every department head in conference room, 2 in 10 minutes. Within minutes. The conference room was packed with people. Captain Minho sat at the head of the table with Hana to his right. Lieutenant Jiwon took notes on her tablet, while Engineer Daiho spread technical drawings across the surface. The other fighter pilots crowded around the walls since there weren't enough chairs. I need to know everything we have available, Hana began. Weapons, ammunition, fuel supplies, construction equipment, everything. Commander, are we actually planning to fight 500 ships? Asked Captain Lee Sun-ho from the construction vessel Busan Worker. Because if we are, this seems like suicide. Maybe, Hana admitted. But I'd rather die fighting than live as alien pets. What do we have for offensive capabilities? Lieutenant Jiwon consulted her tablet. 50 fighter craft, each armed with plasma cannons and short-range missiles. The Sol Dawn has particle beam weapons and defensive barriers. The construction ships have some basic defensive systems, but nothing meant for combat. What about the new Sol? Hana asked, looking at Engineer Daiho. She's not finished yet, Daiho replied. The main engines are installed but not tested. Most of the internal systems are still being connected. The hull is complete, but we haven't installed the final armor plating. What about construction equipment? Daiho looked thoughtful. We have industrial, fabricators, mining charges for asteroid clearing construction robots, plasma cutters, magnetic lifters. Why? Mining charges, how powerful? Each one can crack a small asteroid maybe 50 meters across. We have about 200 charges left from clearing. The construction site. Hana leaned forward with interest. Can they be modified? For what purpose? Whatever we need them for. How long would modifications take? Daiho considered the question. Depends on what you want to do with them. A few hours, maybe less if I have help. You'll have all the help you need. Hana turned to the fighter pilots. I need detailed scans of the alien fleet formation, how they're positioned, what types of ships, where their command vessels are located, everything. Pilot Soman raised her hand. Commander, they'll detect our scanning attempts. I'm counting on it, Hana replied. I want them to see us gathering intelligence. It fits with our surrender story. We're scared humans trying to understand what we're facing. What's the real plan? Captain Minho asked. Hana stood up and moved to the wall display showing the alien fleet. The Vorthak ships were arranged in a complex three-dimensional formation, with the largest vessels at the center surrounded by layers of smaller ships. It looked like a perfect example of military organization and overwhelming force. Look at how they position their ships, she said, pointing at the display. Perfect geometric patterns, every vessel in its assigned position, no deviation from the formation. It's very disciplined, Jiwon observed. It's very predictable, Hana corrected. They think like a military hierarchy. Everything has to be in perfect order. The big ships give orders to the medium ships who give orders to the small ships. So what? So rigid thinking creates rigid tactics. They expect us to either run away or attack head-on. In a straight fight, we're going to do neither. Engineer Daiho was studying the fleet formation on his own tablet. Commander, their ships are flying very close together, especially the command vessels in the center. I noticed that too. Why do you think they do that? Probably shared defensive systems, Daiho said. If their ships can link their shields and weapons, it would make the fleet much stronger, but only if they stay close together. Exactly, Hana said with growing excitement. Their greatest strength becomes their greatest weakness if we can exploit it correctly. Lieutenant Jiwon looked up from her. Notes. What do you need us to do? First, we need to modify those mining charges. Daiho, can you turn them into electromagnetic pulse devices instead of explosives? Possible but difficult, the engineer replied. The power requirements would be enormous. What? If we use the new Sol's main reactor? Daiho's eyes widened. That could work. The ship has enough power generation for a small city. We could create EMP charges powerful enough to disrupt shields and sensors across their entire formation. How? Do we deliver them without getting blown apart? Somin asked. Very carefully, Hana said. And with perfect timing, we get one chance at this. If we miss, we all die. Captain Minho had been quietly listening to the discussion. Commander, this sounds incredibly dangerous. Even if we succeed in disrupting their shields, we still have to actually damage 500 warships with 50 fighters. Not 500 ships, Hana corrected. One formation, the Vorthak, think in terms of unit cohesion. If we can break their formation, their commanders won't know how to respond. Individual ship captains won't be able to make independent decisions fast enough. You're gambling everything. On alien psychology. I'm gambling everything on human adaptability versus alien rigidity, Hana replied. Plus, we have one more advantage they don't know about. Which is, Hana smiled. They think I'm just a pretty butterfly who flies around looking graceful. They have no idea what butterflies actually do. What do butterflies do? Jiwan asked. They migrate, Hana said. Thousands of kilometers across impossible terrain, adapting to any environment, surviving against all odds. And when the seasons change, she paused dramatically, they transform into something completely different. Engineer Deho was already making calculations on his tablet. Commander, if we're really doing this, I need to start modifications immediately. The EMP charges alone will take most of our remaining time. Do it, Hana ordered. Take whatever personnel and equipment you need. Use the construction fabricators to build as many charges as possible. What about the fighters? Somin asked. We're going to practice a new formation. One the Vorthak have never seen before. Something that looks beautiful and harmless but positions us exactly where we need to be when the trap springs. Lieutenant Jiwan closed her tablet. What do we call this formation? Hana looked out the conference room window at the alien fleet hanging in space like a swarm of predators. We call it the butterfly wing maneuver. And when we're done, the Vorthak are going to learn why you should never mock something you don't understand. The meeting broke up with everyone hurrying to their assigned tasks. Engineer Deho headed for the fabrication bays with a team of technicians. The fighter pilots went to their simulators to practice complex maneuvers. Captain Minho began coordinating with the other ship commanders. Hana remained in the conference room studying the alien formation. 18 hours to turn a surrender into a victory. 18 hours to prove that sometimes the smallest creatures could bring down the largest predators. 18 hours to show the galaxy what humans were really capable of when they stopped playing by anyone else's rules. The 18 hours passed faster than anyone expected. Engineer Deho had worked through the night with his team converting mining charges into electromagnetic pulse devices. The fabrication bays hummed constantly as industrial machines created the modified weapons. By dawn, they had produced nearly 300 EMP charges, each one capable of disrupting electronic systems across several kilometers. Lieutenant Jiwan found Hana in the simulator bay, where she had been practicing the butterfly wing formation for the past 6 hours. The simulator showed a complex pattern of fighter movements that looked like graceful dancing, but positioned each ship precisely where it needed to be for maximum tactical advantage. The charges are ready, Jiwan reported. Deho says they'll work, but we only get one shot. The power drain will burn out the circuits after a single pulse. That's all we need, Hana replied without taking her eyes off the simulation. How are the other pilots doing with the new formation? They're nervous, but they trust you. Everyone knows this is our only chance. Hana finally looked up from the controls. Are you ready for this, Jiwan? This isn't like fighting pirates or raiders. If we fail here, a lot of good people are going to die. If we don't try, they die anyway, her wingman replied. At least this way we go down fighting. The communication system crackled to life. All personnel to battle stations. This is Captain Minho. The 18-hour deadline expires in 30 minutes. Throughout the human fleet, people rushed to their positions. Fighter pilots ran to their craft while engineers made final checks on weapon systems. The construction crews secured their equipment and prepared for whatever was coming. Everyone knew the next few hours would determine humanity's future in this system. Hana climbed into her fighter and began the startup sequence. The small craft hummed to life around her with familiar sounds and vibrations. She had flown this same ship through dozens of battles, and it felt like an extension of her own body. Today she would need every bit of skill and instinct she had developed over years of combat. Butterfly Actual. "This is Control," came Captain Minho's voice through the communication system. "The Vorthak are requesting final surrender terms. Tell them I'll deliver our response personally," Hana replied. "All fighters prepare for launch." One by one, the 50 human fighters launched from their bays and formed up in space. To any observer, they looked like a pitiful force facing impossible odds. The Vorthak fleet stretched across the star field like a metallic storm cloud with hundreds of massive warships arranged in perfect military formation. War Admiral Krekstar appeared on Hana's communication screen. The alien leader looked pleased with himself, as if he had won a great victory without firing a shot. His bridge crew stood at attention behind him, waiting for the human surrender. "Well, little butterfly, have you prepared your people for relocation?" he asked, with that grinding laugh. "We have prepared," Hana replied, "but I want to discuss terms in person. I'm approaching your flagship now with my fighter squadron." "How delightfully formal," Krekstar said. "Very well, approach slowly and keep your weapons powered down. We would hate for there to be any accidents." Hana switched to the fighter squadron frequency. "All wings, this is Butterfly Actual Execute formation. Graceful entry, begin the dance." The human fighters moved into what appeared to be a ceremonial formation. They flew in elegant curves and spirals that looked like a formal military display. The Vorthak watched with amusement as the small ships performed their beautiful but seemingly pointless maneuvers. "Look at them dance," one of the alien officers said loud enough to be heard on the communication channel. "Like insects performing. For their betters, quite entertaining," Krekstar agreed. "Perhaps we should keep some of these pilots as performers for our entertainment centers." But Hana's formation was anything but entertainment. Each graceful movement positioned her fighters in precisely calculated locations. What looked like random dancing was actually a complex tactical deployment that would place every human ship exactly where it needed to be when the trap was sprung. Phase 1 complete, Lieutenant Jiwon reported from her position. "All wings in position for butterfly wing deployment." "Confirmed," Hana replied. "Daeho, are the packages ready?" From the construction ship, Busan worker engineer Daeho's voice came through clearly. "Packages loaded and ready for delivery." "Commander, the new Soul is in position." The modified mining charges had been loaded onto what appeared to be construction debris. To the Vorthak sensors, they would look like damaged equipment being jettisoned. From the human ships, the alien fleet paid no attention to the floating wreckage as it drifted through their formation. "Butterfly Actual, this is Control." Captain Minho's voice carried tension. "The Vorthak are getting impatient. They want you to dock with their flagship immediately." "Tell them we're performing a traditional human surrender ceremony," Hana replied. "Our culture requires specific rituals before we can formally submit to a superior force." She could hear Krekstar's grinding laughter through the communication system. How wonderfully primitive these humans cling to their little ceremonies even in defeat. "Very well, continue your dance, little butterfly. We are enjoying the show." Hana smiled grimly as she guided her fighter through another graceful loop. "All wings. Execute Phase 2 butterfly wing formation now." The human fighters suddenly split into two groups that swept outward like the wings of a massive butterfly. To the Vorthak, it looked like another beautiful but pointless display. In reality, it positioned 25 fighters on each side of the alien formation, creating perfect crossfire positions. "Their flying is quite artistic," commented one of the Vorthak officers. "Completely useless in actual combat, but very pretty to watch." "Indeed," Krekstar agreed. "When this is over, we must remember to preserve some recordings. These patterns might inspire our own ceremonial pilots." Meanwhile, the disguised EMP charges continued drifting through the Vorthak formation. The alien ships were packed so tightly together that the floating debris passed within a few kilometers of nearly every vessel. Their sensors detected the objects but dismissed them as harmless wreckage. "All packages in position," Engineer Daeho reported. Standing by for activation, Hana checked her tactical display. Every human fighter was exactly where it needed to be. The EMP charges were scattered throughout the alien formation. The new Soul, with its massive industrial capabilities, was positioned for maximum effect. Everything was ready. Control. "This is Butterfly Actual. Inform the Vorthak that we're ready to begin final surrender negotiations. Understood, Captain Minho replied. Patching you through now. War Admiral Krextar appeared on screen again, looking bored with the entire process. Enough ceremony, little butterfly. Dock with our ship immediately so we can begin processing your people. Of course, sir, Hana said with false humility. Just one more traditional maneuver and we'll be ready to come aboard. Make it quick, Krextar ordered. Our patience has limits. Hana switched to the squadron frequency. All wings, this is it. Remember your training, trust your instincts, and follow my lead when I give the signal. Execute everything exactly as we practiced. Copy that, Butterfly Actual, came the responses from 50 human pilots who knew they were about to attempt the impossible. Deho, are you ready with the special delivery? Ready and waiting, Commander. The new soul is charged and targeted. Hana took a deep breath and looked out at the massive alien fleet surrounding her tiny force. Hundreds of warships bristling with weapons that could vaporize her fighters in seconds. Thousands of alien warriors who saw humans as nothing more than amusing insects. All units stand by, she announced. In 5 seconds we show them what butterflies really do when someone threatens their territory. She began the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2. On the word 1, everything changed. The graceful dance became a deadly strike. The butterfly wings folded into attack position, and across the Vorthak formation, disguised mining charges began to activate with electromagnetic pulses that would cripple the most powerful fleet the galaxy had ever seen. The real battle was about to begin. The electromagnetic pulse charges detonated simultaneously across the Vorthak formation. 300 devices activated at once, sending waves of electromagnetic energy through the tightly packed alien ships. The pulses were invisible to the naked eye, but their effects were immediate and devastating. Lights flickered and died throughout the Vorthak fleet. Shield generators overloaded and shut down. Communication systems went silent. Weapons targeting computers crashed and rebooted. For 30 seconds, the most powerful military force in the galaxy was blind, deaf, and defenseless. Now, Hana shouted into her communication system. All fighters attack pattern Omega, execute, execute, execute. The human fighters that had been gracefully dancing around the alien formation suddenly transformed into deadly predators. What the Vorthak had seen as beautiful but harmless flying became precise coordinated strikes against specific targets. The butterfly wing formation folded inward like a closing trap. Lieutenant Jiwan led the first attack wave against the command ships in the center of the formation. Her fighter screamed through the gap between 2 massive battlecruisers and fired plasma rounds directly into their sensor arrays. The alien ships had no shields and no way to track her approach until it was too late. Direct hits on targets Alpha and Beta, Jiwan reported as she pulled up and away from the explosion. Their command systems are down. Pilot Somin followed close behind, attacking the communication relays that linked the fleet together. Without these systems, the individual Vorthak ships could not coordinate their responses or share tactical information. Each vessel became isolated and confused, communication nodes destroyed, Somin announced. They can't talk to each other anymore. Meanwhile, Engineer Deho was preparing the new soul for its role in the attack. The massive colony ship had been positioned carefully during the 18-hour preparation period. Its industrial construction equipment had been modified for a very different purpose than building homes for colonists. New soul to all fighters. Deho's voice came through the communication system. Clear the firing lanes. The main event is about to begin. The colony ship's construction systems activated with a deep thrumming sound that could be felt through the hulls of nearby vessels. Massive magnetic accelerators that were designed to move building materials began launching metallic projectiles at incredible speeds. Steel beams, construction plates, and industrial components became kinetic weapons traveling at nearly the speed of light. The improvised railgun system fired continuously, sending a stream of construction debris through the heart of the Vorthak formation. Ships that had dominated battlefields across the galaxy were suddenly being torn apart by building materials launched from a half-finished colony vessel. Target the big ones first, Hana ordered, as she dove her fighter through the chaos. Take out their heavy weapons platforms. The human attack was unlike anything the Vorthak had ever experienced. Their military doctrine was based on formation fighting with massive ships, supporting each other in coordinated battle groups. They were trained to face enemies who attacked in predictable patterns using conventional tactics. But the humans were not attacking like a military force. They moved like a swarm of insects flowing around obstacles and striking from unexpected angles. Individual fighters would appear from behind disabled ships, fire at point-blank range, and disappear before the aliens could respond. War Admiral Krextar stood on his flagship bridge, watching his perfect fleet falling apart around him. Emergency lights cast red shadows across the command center as his crew struggled to restore communications and weapons systems. The electromagnetic pulses had damaged more than just their electronics. They had shattered the rigid command structure that held the Vorthak fleet together. "Report," he demanded from his communications officer. "Sir, most of our ships are operating independently." The officer replied, "The command network is down. We cannot coordinate fleet responses." "Then signal them individually," Krextar ordered. "Tell each ship to engage the human fighters." "Sir, the humans are not where they are supposed to be," his tactical officer reported. "Our targeting computers show them scattered throughout our formation, but the attack patterns make no sense." On the main screen, the battle looked like chaos. Human fighters seemed to be everywhere at once, appearing and disappearing in patterns that defied military logic. They struck at weapon systems, sensor arrays, and engine components with surgical precision, before vanishing into the maze of disabled Vorthak ships. "How are they moving like that?" Krextar asked. "No pilot should be able to navigate through our formation at those speeds." But Hana and her pilots knew something the Vorthak did not understand. They had been practicing in simulators for months, learning to fly through complex, three-dimensional environments. The alien formation that looked so impressive and organized was actually a navigation nightmare for ships that could only think in straight lines and rigid patterns. "Jiwan, take your wing and hit the engine clusters on the port side," Hana ordered, as she rolled her fighter between two massive battleships. "Some in your team targets the starboard weapon batteries." "Copy that, Butterfly Actual," came the replies as human fighters split off to attack their assigned targets. The Vorthak ships began firing back, but their weapons were designed for long-range combat between large vessels. The human fighters were too small and too fast-moving through the alien formation like fish swimming through a coral reef. When the aliens did manage to target a human ship, they often hit their own vessels instead. "And sir, we're taking heavy casualties," the tactical officer reported to Krextar. 17 ships destroyed, 43 more with critical damage. From 50 fighters, Krextar could not believe what he was hearing. "How is this possible?" His question was answered when Lieutenant Jiwan's fighter suddenly appeared directly in front of the flagship's main bridge. The young pilot had flown her ship through the docking bay and was now inside the massive vessel's superstructure. She armed every weapon her fighter carried and prepared for a suicide run. "This is for calling us insects," Jiwan said over the communication channel as she fired everything at point-blank range. The explosion tore through the flagship's command section, disabling its main computers and killing most of the senior officers. Jiwan ejected at the last second and was captured by Vorthak security forces, but her attack had crippled the fleet's primary command vessel. "Jiwan is down," Hana announced to the squadron. "But the flagship is out of action. Press the attack." The battle continued with human fighters swarming through the disabled alien formation like angry wasps. The new Soul kept firing its improvised railgun system, turning Vorthak warships into expanding clouds of debris. What had started as an impossible fight was becoming a massacre. "Sir, we must retreat," the surviving tactical officer told Krextar as medics treated his wounds. "The fleet is being destroyed. Retreat." Krextar could barely speak the word. "The Vorthak Empire does not retreat from insects." "Sir, these are not insects," the officer replied. "I do not know what they are, but they fight like nothing we have ever encountered." Through the smoke and flames of his damaged bridge, Krextar watched the human fighters continue their deadly dance. What he had dismissed as pretty flying was actually the most sophisticated tactical display he had ever witnessed. The pilots moved as one organism, flowing through his formation with perfect coordination. "How?" he asked the empty air. How did we underestimate them so completely? His answer came from the communication system as Commander Hana's voice cut through the static. She was broadcasting on all frequencies, so every surviving Vorthak ship could hear her words. You asked? What butterflies do, she said calmly as explosions lit up the space around her fighter. Butterflies migrate across impossible distances. They adapt to any environment, they survive against overwhelming odds, and when the seasons change, her voice carried a note of cold satisfaction, they undergo complete metamorphosis. Another Vorthak. Battleship exploded in a ball of fire as the New Soul's railgun found its target. The alien formation was collapsing as individual ships tried to escape the human swarm. But there was nowhere to run in the confined space of the system. You thought you were fighting pretty insects playing at war. Hana continued. You were wrong. You were fighting evolution itself. And evolution... She paused as her fighter destroyed another alien vessel. Always finds a way. The Vorthak fleet was dying. What had been 500 perfectly arranged warships was now a scattered field of wreckage and disabled vessels. The rigid military formation that Krextar had been so proud of had become a death trap for his own forces. Ships collided with each other as they tried to escape the human swarm, while others drifted helplessly with their engines destroyed. Commander Hana guided her fighter through the chaos with deadly precision. Her fuel was running low and her weapons were nearly depleted, but the battle was almost over. Around her, the other human pilots continued their relentless attack, picking off damaged alien ships one by one. Control, this is Butterfly Actual, she reported to Captain Minho. Enemy fleet is scattered and demoralized, estimate 60% casualties on their side. Confirmed Butterfly Actual, came the reply from the Sol Dawn. Outstanding work, Commander. The construction crews are reporting minimal damage to our facilities. Engineer Deho's voice joined the conversation from the New Sol. Commander, the railgun system is overheating. We can probably manage a few more shots before we have to shut down. Save them for any ship that tries to regroup, Hana ordered. Focus on the command vessels and anything that looks like it might coordinate a counterattack. But there would be no counterattack. The surviving Vorthak ships were fleeing in all directions, abandoning their formation and their wounded comrades. Years of rigid military discipline had not prepared them for the fluid adaptive combat style of the human fighters. War Admiral Krextar watched his fleet disintegrate from the emergency bridge of his crippled flagship. Half his ships were destroyed, and the rest were scattered across the system. The humans had done the impossible, turning a hopeless last stand into a complete victory. Sir, the remaining ships are requesting permission to retreat. His communications officer reported. Denied. Krextar replied through gritted teeth. We do not run from primitives. Sir, with respect, the primitives just destroyed our entire fleet with 50 fighters and a construction ship. The officer said carefully. Perhaps retreat is the wiser course. Before Krextar could respond, his bridge was filled with human soldiers. Lieutenant Jiwon led a boarding party through the damaged sections of the flagship, moving quickly to secure the command center. Her fighter had been destroyed, but she had survived the crash and been rescued by human marines. War Admiral Krextar, Jiwon announced formally. You are now a prisoner of the United Earth Defense Force. Your ship is under our control. The alien leader stared at the young human woman who had nearly killed him with her suicide attack. How? He asked simply. How did you defeat us? We learned to fly, Jiwon replied. You learned to march in straight lines. Captain Minho's voice came through the communication system. Butterfly Actual, this is Control. All enemy vessels have either been destroyed or are requesting terms for surrender. Do you wish to continue the attack? Hana considered the question as she looked out at the debris field that had once been the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. Twisted metal and burning wreckage drifted through space like a monument to the dangers of underestimating humanity. Negative Control, she replied. Cease fire and prepare to accept surrenders. Any ship that wants to live can power down weapons and wait for instructions. Within minutes, white flags began appearing on the remaining Vorthak vessels. Ships that had dominated star systems were now begging for mercy from the humans they had dismissed as insects. The survivors powered down their weapons and waited to learn their fate. Engineer Deho shut down the New Soul's railgun system and began damage assessments. Commander, the colony ship took some hits but nothing critical. We can resume construction whenever you're ready. What about casualties? Hana asked as she guided her fighter back toward the Soul. Dawn, 3 pilots wounded. None killed, Lieutenant Jiwan reported from the captured flagship. 18 fighters with various degrees of damage, but all repairable. We got incredibly lucky. It wasn't luck, Captain Minho said over the communication channel. It was skill planning and the element of surprise. Well done, everyone, as the human. Fighters returned to their ships, word of the victory spread throughout the system. Construction workers cheered from their platforms while colonists aboard transport vessels celebrated their survival. In a few hours, the story would spread to other human colonies and eventually back to Earth itself. War Admiral Krextar was brought aboard the Soul Dawn under heavy guard. He walked slowly through the corridors of the human vessel, studying everything. He saw with the attention of a military analyst. When he was brought to the conference room where Hana waited, he seemed almost curious rather than defeated. Commander Lee Hana, he said formally. The one they call Butterfly. That's correct. Hana replied. Please sit down, Admiral, we have much to discuss. Krextar took the offered chair and looked directly at the human pilot who had orchestrated his fleet's destruction. I must ask the question that has been troubling me since the battle began. Why? Did your people choose Butterfly as the call sign for their most dangerous warrior? Hana smiled and leaned back in her chair. You really don't understand, do you, Admiral? You looked at the word butterfly and saw something pretty and harmless. Something that flutters around flowers and poses no threat to anyone. Yes, Krextar admitted. That is exactly what we saw, but you never asked what butterflies actually do, Hana continued. Butterflies migrate thousands of kilometers across continents and oceans. They navigate by instinct through storms and wind. They adapt to any environment they encounter. And most importantly, she paused for effect. They transform. A butterfly starts life as a caterpillar crawling on the ground. Then it enters a cocoon and completely rebuilds itself into something that can fly. When it emerges, it's no longer the same creature. It has become something new, something capable of things its earlier form could never imagine. Krextar was beginning to understand. Your species has undergone this transformation. We're always transforming, Hana said. That's what makes us human. We adapt, we learn. We become whatever we need to be to survive. Your people saw a pretty insect playing at war. What you actually faced was evolution in action. The battle tactics, your formation flying the weapon systems. Everything was designed specifically to counter our advantages. We studied you for 18 hours, Hana confirmed. We learned how you think, how you fight, how you organize your forces. Then we became something you couldn't understand or predict. Krextar sat quietly for several minutes, processing what he had learned. Finally, he looked up at Hana with something that might have been respect in his dark eyes. What happens now, Commander Butterfly? Now you contact your empire and explain what happened here, Hana replied. You tell them that humanity is not to be underestimated. You warn them that we are capable of things they cannot imagine, and you recommend that they approach us as equals rather than as prey. And if they refuse, Hana's smile turned cold. Then, they'll learn the same lesson you did, Admiral, the hard way. 3 days later, the Vorthak survivors departed the system carrying news of their defeat back to the Empire. The story of Commander Butterfly and her impossible victory would spread throughout alien space, changing how every species viewed humanity. Engineer Deho resumed construction on the New Soul, while Captain Minho filed his battle report with Earth. Command. Lieutenant Jiwan received the highest military honors and was promoted to wing commander. The human colony in the Kepler system continued growing under the protection of pilots who had proven themselves against overwhelming odds. And somewhere in the depths of space, War Admiral Krextar sat in his damaged ship, writing his own report. He described the battle in careful detail, explaining how 50 human fighters had destroyed a fleet of 500 warships. But his conclusion was simple and direct. Do not underestimate the humans, he wrote. They call themselves by the names of small creatures, but they fight like forces of nature. They appear weak but transform into something terrifying when threatened. The Empire should approach them with caution and respect. For we have learned that, when you mock a butterfly— He paused, remembering the debris field his fleet had become. It might just turn your entire world into shrapnel. Years later, children on human colony worlds would hear the story of Commander Butterfly and her impossible victory. They would learn that sometimes the smallest creatures could defeat the largest predators if they were clever enough and brave enough to try. And sometimes when those children saw butterflies dancing through garden flowers, they would remember that the most beautiful things in the universe could also be the most dangerous when they decided to spread their wings and fly.